In this episode, Golden, David Raiklen, and I give you our spoiler-filled discussion of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Full speed ahead. Welcome to the Omega Beam number 59. I'm your host, Oren Merton. So first and foremost, this is our pre-Christmas episode. So Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah to all of you who celebrate. So our last episode was our short spoiler-free thoughts on Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker with friend of the show David Raiklen as our guest. Well, the end of an epic saga like that absolutely deserves a longer spoilerific discussion. And so that is what this episode is all about. We really dig into what we liked, what we loved, what we were disappointed by, and yet there were some things. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, be warned, that is what is coming. All right, let's get into it. I am here with Golden and back again with David Raiklen.
Hey, it's great to be here, especially for such an awesome movie that we've waited 5 decades for.
That's true. 42 years since the first one. Crazy, isn't it? So this is the spoiler-filled podcast on Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker. And
as you might also know in its other title, the best scenes from Star Wars 1 through 8. Recast, redressed, redone.
The new Last Jedi Strikes Back.
Yes.
So I wanted to start by asking everybody, where you came from as far as the 9-film Skywalker saga? You know, did you see them in the theaters? Did you like the first one, the second one? Dave, why don't you start off?
Well, I'm happy to answer that, but first, aren't there at least 12 Star Wars movies that
there are? That's why I specifically said the Skywalker saga, just 1 through 9. There have been others, and there will be others. This isn't, my mother asked me, is this the last Star Wars they're ever making? It's like, no, they're going to make these until the heat death of the universe. But
yeah, I was.
Yes, exactly. 100 years from now, they'll still be making Star Wars in whatever kind of, jack directly into your cerebellum experience of being in the universe.
Exactly. It just won't be this specific 9-chapter saga.
And it is a great saga. I feel more comfortable saying that now than at any time before, because as Golden said so eloquently, this really is the greatest hits or the most important character and action moments from all the previous movies rolled into one, not as a retread, which happened more in The Force Awakens. That was really more like a retread of those ideas.
This time they mixed up the sequence a little bit more.
Yeah.
In other words, instead of just having a gender bender for the lead character, or having 2015 version of the Death Star,
right.
We have Death Star-like powers, but it's in something else. It's not in a Death Star. So the technology has evolved.
Just to be clear, I'm going to be kind of nitpicking and making fun of a lot of the things, but I did enjoy the movie. I think that it was visually stunning and the characters were entertaining. And if you listen to our previous spoiler-free podcast, it's got its humor, it's got its drama, it's got its tear-jerking moments. I mean, it's got all of it. There was just a lot that had me turn into my neighboring husband sitting in the seat next to me and saying, "Oh, what about this? Oh my gosh, look at that."
So I may be the one who likes the series the least of the three of us. The first movie, Star Wars, in many ways changed my life. I saw it as a very, very young child in the theaters. And
Well, I was 2. I don't actually know if I saw it in the theater.
No,
I wouldn't be surprised if my parents took me, but
Yeah, I saw it first run when I was, I think, 8 or whatever it was.
Well, you know what the golden age of science fiction is, right?
The one you're living through?
The 12.
Right. It's when you're a kid. Yeah. I really enjoyed the movies made in the 70s and 80s, which were episodes 4, 5, and 6. I did see Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones episodes 1 and 2 in the theaters, and I was so immensely disappointed that I never even bothered to see the third one. In fact, years later, we decided to rent it just because we figured why not. And Netflix sent us a broken DVD. So we sent it back.
That was from the last person that watched it.
Yeah. So we sent it back. We got another one. And whereas the first disc was broken into 2 separate pieces, the disc we got the second time had a crack running all the way through it, but it was not in 2 pieces. So that person, I guess, was not quite as angry when they saw the movie. And I did end up seeing it years later after that. And I just really, really disliked the movie.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Wow.
They bored me to tears.
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, they bored
Revenge
me to
of the
tears.
Sith, to me, was actually, in many ways, the best movie that George Lucas did other than Star Wars. In other
It's just
words,
that last part with the lava. It's just like, oh my gosh, this is just droning on and droning on. And
oh,
to
yeah.
me,
See,
that's
it's
the whole
operatic.
movie.
In other words, it's like the villain cliche that we all love, where he has to speechify explaining what his master plan is
no,
for the
just shoot
benefit
him.
of the hero, because it's not
See,
for the benefit of the hero, it's for the
that actually
audience.
was something that I liked in this one. Is the one guy, is it Pride?
Mhm.
Figures out who the mole is. Okay, shoot the mole. Okay, let's move on. No, there's no big speech. There's just like, yeah, found your mole. There he goes. He's
So-
gone.
I
Yes,
did.
that was good.
Then there was the 7th, the JJ one, which I thought was certainly better than any of the first 3. But like you said, it was kind of it just shoehorned episode 4 into episode 7. Now, the Last Jedi, number 8, was actually quite controversial among the fan base. I adored it. In many ways, that is my probably second favorite after Empire. Well, no, I think the original one was probably my second favorite after Empire. That'd be my third favorite. What I loved about it was the fact that from the first scene on, I did not know what was going to happen. It was a complete surprise to me. It was new territory. He was breaking rules and inventing them as he went. And I know that the fan base had a collective conniption fit over that, but I loved that fact. I loved being able to sit in a Star Wars movie and not know where it was going.
I know at one point you were like, well, how is it that Leia can breathe like that? What the heck? When did that happen?
Right,
And-
when she Mary Poppins'd it back to the ship.
I think that it was cleaned up in this movie because you weren't ever really told that she was fully trained.
Right, here you get
And here you get that she
That
was
she was
fully
trained.
trained. And she can tap into that part of the Force.
Well, we'll get to it later, but I think in a lot
By
of
the way-
ways, JJ did try and clean up all the things the fans were complaining about in the last one.
I think that JJ wanted to show the training of Leia in the second movie. Remember that he said that
I don't think
he
JJ
had very
was
few-
involved with the second movie, was he?
Well, see, here's the thing:
It
is
was
that
Ryan
uh,
Johnson, I think.
right after Ryan Johnson was announced, there was an interview with JJ, and they asked him, "Do you have any regrets?" And he said, "I have very few regrets, but one of them is that I didn't sign on to direct the 8th episode."
Well, fair enough.
So I think that a lot of what happened in this episode was, to its credit and benefit, was filling in the
Things
stories
that maybe if
that
he
he
had
wanted to
directed the
do in the
second one, he
second
might
one, but
have
now
put
he had
in
to do
there.
in the second one and the third one, which made it even more packed with drama and twists. Because I certainly didn't expect to see Leia back, let alone her being trained as a Jedi. That was a surprise.
Yeah, apparently they said that they were not going to digitize and have her in the her current age. digitized, but that they used archive footage, which was
Yes.
it was good to see.
Yeah, and it looked like them. And that was actually a really cool scene to see Luke and Leia doing the Jedi thing together. That to me was one of many iconic moments in this movie. And I don't think that you can have a Star Wars movie unless you have iconic imagery. And I'm not saying that's easy to do, but that's sort of the quality bar.
Ultimately, I think while I found this movie entertaining, and I'm glad I saw it, the thing that left me sort of disappointed is that after The Last Jedi, I really wanted to be surprised. I wanted to not know where every scene was going. And while there were images I didn't know were going to happen, pretty much every scene was telegraphed. Everyone did exactly what the linear plot would have had to do. There was nothing that surprised me at all.
It wasn't telegraphed like, okay, we're going to telegraph this early in the movie and then have it come way late. It was like, okay, we're going to telegraph this in scene 1. In scene number 3, it's going to be resolved. Okay, we're going to telegraph something else in scene 3, and it's going to be resolved in scene 5.
Well,
it was just,
there's a very good reason they did that. And I'm surprised that you're surprised by that. This is a movie for kids, and you're bringing in all this stuff from previous movies that the kids may or may not have seen. So they have to.
But it wasn't even that.
They have to, tie stuff up quickly in a way that you can understand why'd they do that. Oh, okay, that's why.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, we're going to put this one out there. Okay, and that idea, that little quest in the movie is already gone. Okay, another little quest. And I don't think that speaks to the intellect, the Star Wars fan.
Well, I understand kind of what you're saying, but again, I'm not talking about grown-up Star Wars fans. I'm talking about little kid Star Wars fans. And, there's scenes in the movie that are clearly for very little kids, kids that are like less than 8.
But that's fine. But it kind of, as someone who, Star Wars, there was a lot of people are like always on the fence about Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks was more of a for the kids thing.
Yes.
And most adults are really just irritated by this character.
Yeah, but
and
I knew
think
it was for the kids.
you can aim a movie to little kids, but still have it done in an intelligent way. And I think Harry Potter proved that over and over and over again.
Not to mention most of the Pixar movies. Those are kids' movies, but also really poignant and intelligent for adults as well.
That's true, but they're not war movies.
For the kids. Yeah.
Harry Potter kind of is.
Well, maybe, in by the time you get to Deathly Hallows.
Oh, he's fighting every single movie.
No. I'm not talking about battling. I'm talking about a war movie. I mean, this was definitely, there was as much battle sequences, big, epic, space armada battle sequences in this movie as you'd see in any World War II movie.
Certainly the visuals were excellent. No one would deny that the visuals in this were just absolutely fantastic. And of course it was great to see the original cast back. Although like I said, or like you had said, with all the Leia footage, I mean, I did not imagine that they had that much footage from Last Jedi with her that they did not use, because it seemed like they had just a ton of footage of her saying all kinds of lines that weren't in The Last Jedi, nor did I imagine where they would fit. But, obviously they had them. I thought the pacing was great.
It's called coverage, my friend.
Yeah,
and
yes.
When you literally have hundreds of millions of dollars writing on what this person says or doesn't say, you make sure that they say just about anything that you might need.
I don't think that I think we had plenty of people saying I have a bad feeling about this. I don't think that the line needed to be used more than once.
Yeah,
but
so speaking of things that were redone from previous movies, Golden has a list. Shall we go through it?
Okay, well, the big waves.
Yes, those were really awesome.
They were really awesome. So we went from lava to
Right.
waves.
So instead of the big fight being on the lava planet, now it's on the water planet. But
I thought it was
basic
from
idea.
Camino in Attack of the Clones, where they had the big wave scenes outside the clone factory.
Oh, see, I saw it more as like the fight taking place in between the lava from the last movie. Yeah,
it could be both. What did you think of having all the Jedi actors coming back to do the voiceover of the history of Jedi flowing into Rey?
That was nice. I thought that was nice.
They brought Ben Burt himself back to do that. When he had a unpleasant, I don't know what the right word to say is, discontinuation of his relationship with the Star Wars franchise in the first two films.
Ooh.
So Ben Burt is the sound designer who created the iconic sounds like the lightsaber and R2-D2 and the whoosh of the TIE fighters going by. All the iconic sounds were designed by him, and he wasn't in the first two films, but he was back for this one, which was really, to me, was touching.
Okay.
So I'm going to, since we were talking about the waves and, the Death Star being on the planet there. So she gets there, she goes into it, and she's climbing up a column, which just happens to look a lot like the column that Ben Kenobi went to turn off the tractor beam.
Right. Well, wasn't it in a Death Star? I mean, it was a crashed Death Star.
Yeah. But she just happens to go on that one column.
Mm-hmm.
She gets to the throne room where she then has a battle just like
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, just like Return of the Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
which then plays out later when she's in front of Palpatine. And he's like, oh, yes. And just like in Return of the Jedi, I'm going to open up the window and I'm going to show you that your friends are meeting their doom right now in the skies or the planet right there. And
you have to do what I'm telling you to do if you want to save
Very reminiscent of those two things. I was just kind of waiting for her to turn his electricity on him.
Yeah, in the end, she did, which was
waiting for that.
Which was cool because I don't remember the good guys ever using Force lightning before.
Well, every movie since the JJ times, they've been every movie's added new Force powers. So
Yeah, they had.
Well, this is an old Force power, but we've never seen a good guy being able to summon the Force lightning.
And they had to throw in the 1 in a million shot, as if they're going to go and like in Star Wars at the end.
Yes,
but I did like how. Hey, okay, they're going after the antenna? Okay, fine. We won't use that antenna. We're going to use the antenna on our ship then. So we're being smart bad guys. I like the return of Red 5. The fact that we have Luke's X-Wing back. And the fact that he's the one that has to then raise it up out of the water.
Yeah, that was a beautiful scene.
I thought that was kind of neat. I think it's cute that no matter which Star Wars, they have to be droid buddies. So now BB-8 has his little droid buddy.
Yes.
So I thought that this one kind of started like a joke. So here's my joke for you, David. Ready?
Yeah.
A spice runner, a stormtrooper, and a scavenger walk into a bar. The bartender nods while they go into the back room and ask a gremlin to perform a lobotomy on a droid. The droid says, "Why'd I agree to this?"
Ba-dum-bump.
Ba-dum-bump. I mean, just seriously, seems like it should be a joke. A spice runner, a stormtrooper, and a scavenger walk into a bar, and they performed it.
Yes,
but bars, of course. Every Star Wars movie has to have its bar.
And spice runner. Okay, now we're reminiscent of Han Solo and his former before he turned to the Resistance.
Yeah, that was a surprise. I was not expecting Han to be back.
That was something that maybe I didn't pay attention and people were saying it, but Harrison Ford did a good job saying, I'm not doing that again. I am not playing that role again. And we believed him. And that was great because as much as during that scene, I was like, oh, he's coming back. He's going to be there. It was still a nice surprise to see that he did.
And he was good.
Especially because, on the whole, how they just grabbed scenes from the other movies, both Empire and Revenge, Return of the Jedi had, the hero sitting on the log or whatever and talking to the Force ghost. And you had that here too. She wasn't on a log, but still talking to the Skywalker Force ghost. And this, of course, the Force ghost, shows up, when it needs to at the very end, like it did in the celebration of Return of the Jedi. But the Han thing was new. That was new under the sun, and that was nice.
And he said, "Well, you're not here." It's like, "Well, I'm in your memory." Yeah, he's there in your memory. So other scenes that reminiscent, we go back to the first Star Wars movie with the good versus evil in the hangar bay next to the ship with all of the stormtroopers walking, watching around.
Mm-hmm.
So building on the joke for a minute. So CP3O is having his mind wiped. It would have been nice, and I think it would have been very cool, had it, when R2-D2 restores his memory, he restores all of it. Because this has got to not, this has to not be the first time that C-3PO's mind has been wiped.
Well,
if the first 3 movies exist.
Well, as I recall, not only was his mind wiped at the end of episode 3, where they say, "Oh, we're going to wipe their minds," but also, if I recall correctly, in the cartoon of the Clone Wars, at one point, their minds were wiped as well. So it's every few years he needs a good mind wipe, but it's fine.
Yeah. Well, he's got to keep track of all those languages.
Right.
And I realized that Finn was at one time a stormtrooper. He's been out of the stormtrooper uniform long enough that he should be a better shot.
Yes.
He missed a couple. But still, I think the stormtroopers actually got better too, though.
Yeah, the stormtroopers were a little better, but they're still lousy shots. And thank goodness for that. Because,
well, stormtrooper school, anyone who can fire, anyone who hits anything is immediately kicked out, and they only go with those who can't hit it.
And then
from the inside.
Have at the end of the other movie with Leia and Luke jumping up onto the Millennium Falcon from Cloud City. And then in this movie, you have them jumping onto the Millennium Falcon, now just from, the falling Star Destroyer. So again, it's like your favorite scenes from all of the Star Wars movies put into one, which if you're a Star Wars fan, it's great. And I'm not saying that that's bad. It was very entertaining. How did Lando get there to the base? Were they handing out maps? Because all of a sudden he's there.
Right. No, in all honesty, one of the notes that I
And the planet that he was on is destroyed, right?
No.
Or was that different? Okay.
We didn't see Cloud City, which I was
right.
hoping we'd see that.
We saw a tiny bit of Cloud City.
We did?
Point. Yeah.
I don't think we did.
At the very end.
It was a blink and I missed it.
It was at the very end.
If we did, it was a blink and I missed it.
It was, I think, in the little celebration thing.
Oh, all right.
It was a Star Destroyer falling behind one of the... But yeah,
one of the...
Right. See, it was the other planet that was destroyed. But it's just like, okay, how did Lando get there?
One of the notes that I have is that from a story point of view, I understand from a nostalgia point of view why they wanted to get Billy D. Williams back and they wanted to get the character back. But from a story point of view, his character was completely unnecessary. It could have been any other character. He didn't in any way do anything that somebody from the old franchise would have been required to do. It could have been anyone younger, anyone newer.
But he's the first original pilot of the Millennium Falcon. So if we don't have Han to do the amazing piloting and
we don't have Rey.
And we don't have Rey, who's going to fly that ship?
We already know that.
Well, we already saw, which was in the last movie, which, I think, like I said, I unfortunately, I think JJ and probably just the Lucasfilm in general was trying to work very hard to erase that movie. But we already saw basically Chewie flying the Millennium Falcon with some, what are they called? Pogs?
Yeah, the
Porgs.
Porgs. Yes, thank you. So we already saw him flying the Falcon. So really, you don't need another pilot. I mean, he's perfectly capable of doing some amazing flying on his own.
The other thing that I think would have been, speaking of porgs, that would have been kind of cute is that when she crashes the ship and she's burning the ship, to have those like older porgs or whatever, wherever the people are, not just the porgs, but have the indigenous people from that island be like, that was our home. Come on. Because Ray just kept being destructive to them so often. So
standard colonial behavior. Don't care about the natives. Anyway,
I did like the dark Ray. She was very calm and very suave,
and she had cool teeth. Really cool teeth.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she's really a movie star level actress, and it's probably the big discovery of the current trilogy is Daisy Ridley, right? She's going to be a big movie star, I predict.
Yeah, well, we'll see. You never know how that's going to go. I mean, maybe, typecasting can also play a part as well, but certainly she's got the talent. That goes without saying.
So I remember reading, one of the things I read was like these, all of a sudden now the stormtroopers can fly. What? So they fly for one scene and then they don't fly ever again? They actually do. So I looked for that and they do fly later on.
Yeah, at the end,
as well.
Right? Yeah.
So question is, they must have had this technology because the bounty hunters, Boba Fett had it.
Right.
So they must have had the technology. It's just nice to see them actually catch up with that.
Yes. Well, maybe everything was kind of held back because they were, under the control of the Emperor. And so there wasn't much room for innovation there.
Maybe. I'll buy that.
So more on the other things that I did like. I liked that there was a high-ranking female lieutenant on the Star Destroyer.
Yes.
I think that was nice to see that because that wasn't something that we usually saw in other Star Wars films.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that there was that little exchange between Poe and Zorli at the end where he's like nodding to her like, okay, is it a kiss now? And she's like, no, I don't think so. Is that okay? And he walks away.
Yeah, that was good.
Because it was just cute. It was nice. And the snake worm thing that was injured. I like that she stopped for a moment and didn't just play into acting and actually thought about it. It was like, well, maybe there's a reason. Why? And that not everything has to be solved with violence. And I know that was just a device to show that she could heal. But it was still a nice thing to see. It was nice to see that play out.
Yeah, and it also showed her character and her personality, that she wasn't a Palpatine. So we knew that before it was revealed that she was. We already understood that, okay, like the movie said, that there's more to life than blood or whatever it was.
Well,
speaking of
that sense that she could be more and different than her parents.
Speaking of things that were dangled and never resolved.
What was Finn going to say?
Yeah, he's going into the Sarlacc pit. Oh, I'm sorry, the sand. And he says,
"Oh, that was the Sarlacc pit."
Yeah,
yes.
And so he says, "I never told you." And then at one other point, for when she's down in the tunnel, she's like, "What were you going to say?" He's like, "Tell you later." And then
when Poe's not around,
right? And it's never resolved. It's just that thread was just to add something, and then it was just gone. Maybe it's on a cutting room floor somewhere. Otherwise, it's just, I don't know, just sort of dangling writing.
So the end. We come to the end. Ben has returned. Now that he's been redeemed, he can now die in peace.
Yes. And
just like his granddad, save the day and die.
So I would have had a problem. And at first, you have that end scene and they're coming closer. And I'm thinking, don't kiss. Don't, And they do. And I'm like, it just.
Yeah, but then that was a kiss goodbye.
Yes. And then he's gone. If he had remained, I think I would have had a problem with it just being, oh, well, I loved you and you loved me. Instead of there being an even deeper connection than that. And there was. And I think the fact that it was a goodbye kiss allowed that kiss to be more genuine and more powerful than if he was actually going to live.
Yes. Oh, and that's a very important thing, talking about the ending and the healing, that they established earlier in the show that her healing power came from sharing some of her force
Yes.
with
Her life force.
her life force with the creature, and which, then she regenerated.
And she shares it with Ben.
Yes, and she shares it with Ben, but then Ben shares some of his life force. So she actually now is part Skywalker.
So when...
on a molecular level.
She kills Kylo Ren. She heals Ben. So in doing that, she brings Ben back.
From a Greek drama writing philosophy, it is generally said and established by the ancient playwrights that the act of revenge taints permanently the revenger. And so, not to say that this is the deepest film ever made, but I do think that in a sense, since it was she who in a sense gets revenge on behalf of the Jedi, and he did not, that by, in a sense, giving
of the Jedi is a different movie.
By giving her what's left of his untainted life force, he in a sense not just brings her back and revives her from whatever coma state she was in, but he gives her in a way almost a fresh start. When now she, like you said, she's a Skywalker now. She's now not tainted by sort of Palpatine on Palpatine murder.
He wanted,
now she's something else.
He wanted her to take his hand, and she says,
and she did.
I wanted to take Ben's hand. That's the hand. And I think that is very meaningful to him. And then you come to the end of the movie, you have your pan of all of the cities and all the Star Destroyers instead of the fireworks exploding. And then you go back to where it all started.
Yes.
With episode 4, Tatooine.
And that was beautiful.
And
I don't care why they did it. It was a beautiful thing to do.
And the silhouette in the sun.
The binary sunset.
With her and BB-8. And then she buries the past. Mm-hmm. She sinks it deep. She says goodbye. And she breaks out this, I want to say, amber lightsaber. To show that she is now a true Jedi.
Yes, and a Jedi unlike any before.
And then my thought goes to, is that color now available at Disneyland?
I'm sure it is.
Yes.
I'm sure. If it isn't, it will be. Yeah, so there's certainly a lot of good in this movie. And like I said, it's not that I didn't enjoy it. Since I did really, really like The Last Jedi so much, I wonder, it's almost like when Rian Johnson took over, JJ had set up Snoke as the big bad guy. He'd put in there that, maybe Rey is somehow connected to the old trilogy. All of that, Luke is going to be the hero again, sets up all these things. Rian Johnson, and Kylo Ren has a Darth Vader-like helmet. Rian Johnson goes out of his way. He destroys it all. He breaks the helmet. It turns out Rey is not part of any kind of great big family. Snoke is not the big bad. He's, slaughtered off.
He's just a clone. He's just someone that was made.
And so it seems that in this one, JJ went, oh yeah, you're going to try and erase what I wrote? Well, I'm going to bring it all back. And so the helmet comes back. Turns out that Snoke, while he may not be the big bad, he was the big bad's lieutenant after all, because he was a clone made by the big bad.
There were more of them, yeah.
Luke comes back and says, oh yeah, remember me not being the hero in the last one? Yeah, I was wrong. I wonder if these two directors were trying to leapfrog each other.
Oh, they definitely were. And it's so good for all, including future generations, that JJ, who I think is genuinely a Star Wars fan, has the last word.
So what other Easter eggs did you see?
Oh, gosh. Well, there's mean, one of the reasons I'm going back and seeing it right away and on an even bigger screen.
Mhm.
By the way, we saw it in
The
a
Dolby
Cinema, which is a great
The
theater.
seats were rumbling as the
Yeah, I mean, it was like a theme
ships
park
were-
ride. in a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
way.
as the ships were taking off. Your seats like rumbling with them. Yeah,
Definitely adds to the experience.
Yes.
I was surprised at how much lighting they left on during the movie. There was actually a lot of ancillary light still.
Yeah. There was, well, you can do that because the Dolby screen is so much darker.
Right. It's a-
So you can
Really
have
high
some ambient
contrast.
light and it doesn't wash things out as much as it would in a screen that's already a little bit too reflective. So
yeah.
that's an advance in the technology.
And back to Easter eggs.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about what are some of my favorite Easter eggs. Well, I'll go back to the musical ones because this is a 25-hour cinematic opera where instead of the characters singing, they speak. But that's actually a tradition in opera now too. You know, characters that speak their lines without having to
Sing
sing.
them.
And
Mhm.
it's really the thing that's going to stand the test of time the best or the most viably because the music works apart from the film.
The music does work apart from the film. It always has in the Star Wars movies.
Yes, and Johnny's going to be back at the Hollywood Bowl and touring around the world. And you know what he's going to be touring is the Star Wars suite where
Yeah.
he has...
Sure.
And I don't know if you guys remember, but a few years back, he did a prototype of it. And he had James Earl Jones and Ian McDiarmid live on stage as the narrators.
Interesting. No, I didn't
So
remember.
that was a
happened.
heck of a show.
Oh, nice.
I mean, to hear that music live being beamed right at you while
Mhm.
you're watching the movie is a whole other level of it. And
Sure.
then, having that people from the movie actually being in the room with you instead of, just projected, that was also pretty amazing. So some of the musical Easter eggs are that when Luke is raising his ship,
X-wing,
his X-wing from
the water
the water
instead of the
there.
swamp.
Yes, the same
But it still has
music
green
that
stuff on it.
was played in The Empire Strikes
Yeah.
Back
Mhm.
is being played
Yeah,
there.
no, I was
but with an
realizing
updated
Yeah.
Yeah.
version of it, and I think that's a wonderful Easter egg that now he's kind of become the Yoda figure. So he gets the
Yeah, Yoda wasn't in this one.
but his music
His voice
was.
was.
His
Yeah.
voice
And
was,
I've
and
heard,
his
I've heard some people are upset that Baby Yoda was not in this one.
yeah. Well,
As far as I'm
that
concerned,
was
Baby Yoda is the best character in the entire Star Wars universe.
yeah.
I am so in love with that show and that character.
It is, and that's all based off the cantina from the first one, right? That's what Favreau said that
Right.
his idea was to take the world of the Mos Eisley cantina and explore just who are all these people and what are they doing, apart from what the Skywalkers are doing.
So things that were missing from Star Wars, the first movie. The end of the movie, Princess Leia gives
Oh yes, that is a wonderful, and
Gives Luke
that's
a
the
medal?
actual medal.
Han a medal,
Mhm.
gives
Luke a medal.
I said that.
Doesn't
And-
give Chewbacca
And
one.
finally, at the end of this, gives Chewbacca his medal.
It only took 42 years for Chewbacca to get his medal.
Well, they're long lived.
Yeah. Yeah, Wookiee, he's going to be around.
But
He's fine.
I did like that they were able to step into the fact that Leia had more power and she had the ability to sense across the way, and that Rey could also start to sense like when she's near Chewbacca, and that Finn was like, wait a minute, I'm believing in this. I get that. Hey, yeah, I think something's, I can feel it. And stepping into it. And it was nice to also, I was ready to say, oh, I know how to fix this trash compactor so it will aim at the main thing, make it explode. But
Yeah.
it was, no, let's just aim their own cannon at them from their ship. Like, hey, that's. I thought that was very nice. I'm not sure kind of where they were going with the Lando and the other character, and she's like, "Well, I'm not sure where I'm from. Well, I'll help you. I'll figure it out."
Yeah.
I don't
I
know that
didn't
it
quite
really
understand that.
matters where she's from.
Mm-hmm.
She's where she is now, and the future is ahead of her.
Yeah, but that does make me wonder if maybe they're setting up a spin-off between, with those two characters.
Or maybe not just those two characters, but getting people that were taken as children and had become stormtroopers back to their homes.
Oh, but I do want to say, before we get off the music Easter eggs, that when everybody lands back on the rebellion planet
Mhm.
or resistance planet, whatever they
The
call
planet
it.
that none of us know the name of.
Right.
But yet they hand out maps.
When everybody's finally back together, they play Yoda's theme. And I thought that was a very interesting choice. Because, John doesn't do things with character themes by the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
He will choose a theme that might not be what you'd expect and isn't the character that's in the scene, because he thinks that it fits what the intention or the story importance of it is.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the most famous example is when the first Ben, Obi-Wan,
Right.
discorporates, becomes one with the Force.
Mhm.
And, Vader is kind of frantically looking around.
Like
what the
poking
heck happened to
around
him?
like,
Yeah.
hey,
How could he do
come
that?
back here.
Right. The music they're playing there is Leia's theme. I've always thought that that's because Leia is now leading the rebellion. So it doesn't matter that Obi-Wan is gone because someone else is already leading the rebellion.
That makes sense.
And
I'll buy that.
so instead of feeling sad that Obi-Wan is gone and thinking that they're defeated, and the audience is feeling, oh yeah, that's right, we have a new hero that's going to lead the fights. So I think that putting Yoda in there is like saying that, okay, now the tradition of the Jedi
Right.
is being carried on, because that was what he represented, right? Yoda was like the tradition of all that was good about the Jedi. And I hated that part in The Last Jedi because it was showing the tradition not going on and putting it in jeopardy. And that was something that really bothered me about that. And that's the thing I'm most happy about, is because for me, what makes it Star Wars is there's Jedi involved. And sure, the Force is important, but the Force is just magic unless you have the Jedi training that says that, like Hogwarts, that yes, you may be a very talented potential wizard, but you have to go through the training to actually be a wizard. And, to be a Jedi, you have to go through the training.
So I wanted to expand on something I brought up earlier because it came to mind just now when we were talking. When I was saying like they give a clue and then the clue is resolved right away. So when they're on the planet, Zorli says, "Oh yeah, I got this disc finally. I can now escape." And 2 minutes later is handing it over to Poe. I'm saying that was too
convenient.
It was just there was a lot of a little bit too convenient type clues.
Well, just their entire relationship. She starts out saying, "I'm going to kill you because I'm so mad at something in the backstory we're not going to talk about." And then it turns around and it's like, "Come leave with me." It's like, really?
Well, that's why she's upset with him, is because he spurned her earlier. She really wants him to stay with her.
Apparently.
But she's not giving him a kiss,
Right.
though.
Yeah.
I do think it's safe to say that this movie was, if you didn't like The Last Jedi, you will probably like this one a lot. If you did like The Last Jedi, I mean, it's still a good movie, but you're gonna miss out on something.
The other thing I was thinking was interesting. You have Kylo Ren walking the same hallways like Darth Vader did, but it's just not as imposing, and it never has been.
That's true. Although he was more imposing in this movie than he was
It still just isn't the same. There was just something about the Darth Vader character that
because there was
something that you can't replicate.
There was no emo about him, with Ben Skywalker / Kylo Ren / Adam Driver. You have a very emotive, emo, conflicted character. Darth Vader was conflicted for less than 90 seconds in the final film.
Well, he was conflicted a lot more in the first 3 movies.
Those were also just bad films. It's fine if you like them. I like bad films. There's many bad films I enjoy.
Well, there are
thoroughly.
Great moments in them, and that's why I like them.
I had a friend that had never seen 4, 5, and 6. So I sat her down and we watched in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, she kind of knew about Darth Vader, but she didn't know that this little boy was going to become him when she first started watching it. And it was interesting to see it from her perspective as she's discovering this.
Did she have any comments?
Oh, no, it was what? Because to her, it was a surprise. Most of us that were familiar, I mean, I loved the poster that they did for episode 1, where it had the boy standing in front of the house and the shadow was Darth Vader.
Yeah, I thought that was iconic.
Extremely, wonderfully well done. I would love to have a poster of, I think it's great. They need to make a poster with just Rey and BB-8 in that silhouette.
Yeah, that would be the poster for the trilogy. The Disney Star Wars trilogy would be that image.
So I'm going to segue for just a moment. We commented on this before. At first, a lot of the previews that we were seeing were almost the exact same previews that we saw before Jumanji: The Next Level. However, they added a couple in, and wow, there were 2 superhero movies with female leads.
Yes.
And then followed by the live action Mulan. So 3 previews that were female heroes.
Yes, and
going into this movie, which is basically another female hero.
And I was more excited, more interested in seeing the female Scarlett Johansson-led Black Widow than the Daniel Craig-led James Bond.
Yes, but will it be Daniel Craig leading it?
That's an interesting question.
Could be because Monica Rambeau.
He is not the only 00.
Yeah, when we saw the previews before Star Wars started, I turned to Golden and I said, "So, am I going to like this movie more than I liked the Wonder Woman trailer?" And when we left, I said, "No." But to be fair, I am a massive fan of the Wonder Woman that they made, Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins. So
that looks awesome too.
To see the trailers, and we're going to see a lot of movies, and I probably have seen that trailer for 1917 8 times.
Oh my gosh!
But yet,
it looks really good.
It is got to be one of the best trailers I have ever seen, and they switched it up a little bit this time, but I am just. My attention is right there for that trailer every single time I have seen it, because that trailer is just so well done.
Well,
and it really accurately portrays the movie. In other words, it's an honest trailer.
I am not a big war movie person. Have you seen the movie?
Oh yeah, I've seen it and I loved it. And
I thought it wasn't out yet.
I saw it at a preview. I
Okay.
get to see them as part of my work, but the movie itself is another war movie.
Yeah. Go
but
figure.
this one is
This one's
fun.
not as
I am
long
glad-
ago and far away.
I'm
It's
glad
more close to our
hear
time.
That the preview does it. The movie does the preview justice.
Well, it
because-
does have a Rotten Tomatoes aggregate score already
Oh, does it?
of 93%.
Yeah, and I would
Which
say
is
that
twice as high as. Oh, I'm just kidding.
It's pretty
no,
close.
it's very accurate in terms of how good the other 93 level movies, like say Endgame or Toy Story 3 or whatever, it's
I think
at that
most of the
level.
Toy Stories are closer to 100. Most of them, I think, are. But
Could-
okay,
Well,
Could
once we
be.
get over 90%,
I guess we should go
I'm
back
not sure
to Star Wars
statistically.
now.
But it is interesting that I'm excited about seeing all those other movies, and yet there's something that they'll never be able to achieve, and that's
The nostalgia of Star Wars.
yeah. Part of it is the nostalgia, but part of it is also that the story has evolved over a very long period
And
of time, and so it's not just like a TV series sequel where you can binge all the episodes.
Right.
You have to actually live your life in order to get to this episode.
you asked one of you asked at the very beginning, or you asked at the very beginning, what our experiences of
Right.
Star Wars. I remember growing up, I really enjoyed the first movie. I enjoyed A New Hope. I enjoyed Return of the Jedi. And the second Empire Strikes Back, it wasn't until I became an adult, or later on when I was an adult and I started watching it, that I really began to appreciate it for what it was and really admire the movie. And I don't think that any of the others in the Skywalker saga top those three movies for me, 4, 5, and 6.
Yes.
And I'm not counting Rogue One or Solo or any of the other movies.
Right. Just the Skywalker saga.
Just the
I
Skywalker
getcha.
saga. I think in terms of all the Star Wars movies I've seen, definitely Rogue One follows those three.
Mhm.
I was also, because I was a kid growing up with Star Wars, a fan of the Endor movies,
Mhm.
which I'm sure I've never watched them as an adult. I'm sure were pretty bad, but I just loved them anyway.
The Endor movies?
Yes. There are 2 Endor movies,
Yeah.
and they are available on Disney Plus. And if you really want, I will watch them with you.
I don't even know what these are.
See, that's love.
I've never even heard of them.
No, the movies have been around for quite some time.
They were done. Were they done in the 80s?
Yeah, I think they were
Yeah.
done in the 80s, and they're Lucasfilm productions.
One of them was the Battle for Endor.
Were these animated?
No,
No, these are live action
They take
movies
place
taking
on
place.
Endor.
Yeah. In other words, when they went back to Endor in the Rise of Skywalker, that's something that also has been done before.
Yes.
But again, it's in a very different way.
Were these kids' movies or? I seriously have absolutely no idea these films were ever made. I mean, they couldn't have been like massive $100 million blockbusters.
Were they direct to TV or were they in
Yeah, I
theater?
think they may have been direct-to-TV movies. In other words, they were Lucasfilm movies, but I don't know that they got a theatrical release.
Oh, fair enough.
Although,
it
the
says
Clone
that
Wars movie.
The Battle for Endor was a TV movie.
Yes.
It was a TV movie.
And in those days, TV movies didn't have the massive budgets that they do now.
And then it looked like there was also something about Exit for Endor.
Yeah, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah, no, I mean, now because of Disney Plus, you can go back and you can see them.
Great.
Yes. Oh, by the way, I liked that they did a kind of sci-fi thing with the droids that, yes, C-3PO could decipher the symbols, but he couldn't speak them because his programming wouldn't allow him to do that.
Yeah, he memorized
the
it.
laws of robotics.
Yeah, so it was like a laws of robotics
Yeah.
thing.
Just like
that
you find out.
in theory, he can do it, but in practice,
Right.
the programmers were
little-
smart enough
and-
to not allow that to happen.
And the
Right.
little one-wheeled droid knew exactly what the dagger said.
Mhm.
But it wasn't as easy as that because you had to like fly a certain path to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was very cute that you have the droids that have that anthropomorphic feeling to them, where the droid's like, no, it's okay. I'll do. It's okay. You can stay over there. I'm gonna stay over here. I've had enough of people, and he has to actually get used to it. And he's like, well, now I miss her because it just gives them that human quality that droids can evolve and can, and that's nice to see in Star Wars.
Yeah, in a way, I think that's a lot of Disney influences, having the droids, which are kind of like kids that can't really say what they are thinking and feeling and observing, but they know what's going on.
Right. And you know in the droid, the build your own droid section of Disneyland, they're going to be selling the new droid.
Maybe.
Yes. Along with building your own lightsaber.
Yeah.
And I agree. And it would be cool to have an amber one.
Definitely.
I'm going with amber. I'm not a big fan of yellow, so I'm going to say it's amber.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was like a goldish amber.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah.
It was a nice color.
And, we hadn't seen that before. Not even in that, I forget which arena it is, but it's a battle in
Attack of the Clones, where they were
I think it was
all
Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, where all the different Jedi with all their different colored lightsabers were massacred.
Well, I mean, that's the final stage of being a Jedi is building your lightsaber.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, and she got to do that, and that was cool. Oh, and also another scene that I loved was, and remember when Rey is meditating.
Mm-hmm.
And she's, 20 feet off the ground and has boulders around her. And you remember that Luke was also meditating in Empire Strikes Back, but you can see that it's on a higher level. She's literally on a higher level than Luke was.
Yeah, very much like the training. So we're approaching an hour. So as we close this up,
you also had the helmet where you can't see and you're having to fight the droid from the first movie.
Yeah.
The blinders down.
Oh, and remember that we had from Phantom Menace where Darth Maul had the double lightsaber, which was such a fearsome weapon. And this one we got to see the good guy fighting with multiple lightsabers.
This is true.
Yes, but unlike Ghostbusters, you can cross your lightsabers.
Yes, especially if you want to stop Force lightning.
So it's hard to stick a landing on a saga like this. This year, 2019, we got a pretty amazing conclusion to an even not longer in time, but longer in film saga with Endgame.
Sure, 23 movies. Yeah. That's a record.
And that was an amazing, it put an incredibly satisfying bow on.
That put a pin in it.
Yeah. So given that both this and Endgame were released this year, I would say that I personally enjoyed Endgame a lot more. I think it was more inventive, and I think it stuck the landing better. But I do think that this was an enjoyable movie, and it sort of, gives you what you want, I think. But it's more fast food.
Again, it's difficult to compare, the how well Darth Vader was played in Endgame or how well Thanos was played in the Rise of Skywalker, because that didn't happen.
Right, they're different stories.
Yeah. But in terms of sticking the landing, for me, they were equally satisfying, but in different ways.
Okay.
Because this was putting a bow on the past, on a legacy that has literally changed the way movies are made worldwide.
If you find the little, I don't know how many minutes things it is on, George Lucas filming this and what it cost him and all the different things, just a little brief thing. that is out there. I think it's from Coast something Coast that they put out, about following your dreams. And
Sure.
it was, Star Wars was a game changer. I may not have seen it in the theater and been old enough to appreciate it then, but it's still, you're able at any age to go back and look and see how much of a game changer this was for the movie industry, for people, for
the
just-
culture.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It really has had an
It's
impact
extremely powerful.
that there's only a very, very select group of characters or universes that have changed world culture.
Right.
One of them might be Sherlock Holmes. Another would be Harry Potter, the Marvel universe, and Star
And
Wars.
a lot of
so
those-
there's
I would
only
add
going to
Star Trek
And
changed
Star
the
Trek.
culture in
Yes.
A lot of
serious
those movies and their special effects, where would they be if Lucas hadn't developed ILM and said, this is important and these are things that need to have their own companies, because
Yes.
these things need to have their own space to develop.
Right. I mean, the reason why we have the amazing, innovative Weta Digital is because of ILM. ILM was what they were trying to be like. And so that had to exist before
Yeah, sure.
it could be like
Sure.
that. And, the importance of the opening weekend, I mean, that was because they saw the incredible response that happened from Star Wars. So that changed how people marketed
Right.
things, because they realized, wait a minute, there's this whole phenomena of getting people so excited that you make this boatload of money just in the first 3 days.
So
And-
for a short time, for a year or so, I was looking at becoming a digital artist. And I sent my reel to several people. And one place called me back and said, hey, look, we were interested in interviewing you. And I said, sure, no problem. They said, but we don't know where your city is, where Laverne is. And I said, where Laverne was. And they're like, oh, well, that's kind of too far away. I said, well, no, I'd still like to come up to ILM and interview, because they were the ones that called me.
oh my.
And I went up there, and I think the one really big strike against me was the fact that I did not live in San Francisco. And I was not as familiar with the city as what they wanted for what they were hiring.
All right. So
But
But
speaking,
I would have moved in an instant.
Yes.
That was right before they started the first 3 movies.
Right. There's
But-
just
sorry,
before
well,
we wrap up.
Episode
though,
1, 2, and 3.
I wanted to just quickly remind people that there are Star Wars novels, there's Star
Sure.
Wars video games, there's TV shows.
And be careful with the novels and things, because they're not always the same timeline.
Yeah. But all of this is a kind
Yeah.
of legacy
sure.
that we're summing up in this movie. So that makes it different than Marvel, which also is getting to that point and probably
Yeah.
surpassing it,
The Star Wars.
because it's not over. The MCU isn't finished. And of course, neither is Star Wars, but you know what I'm saying, that this
Right.
is kind of
Well, the Star
ends
Wars
this
land
saga.
landed at Disneyland before Stark Industries is up and running.
Right. So to end on a note of hope about
A New
the
Hope?
Star Wars franchise, but I would say this. I have read some people on social media, whatever, that are a little bit anxious, like, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to the Star Wars trilogy now that all the Lucas stuff is gone? Is it all going to
Now
go straight to hell? And
it's a bright new world.
I would just show The Mandalorian as an example. I mean, that's going to be a whole podcast. Suffice to say, I think it's spectacular. But I think if nothing else, it shows that they're going to get creative people who have vision and are going to do great things.
And love Star Wars.
And love Star Wars, and that Star Wars is not going away, and it's not going to be diluted to the point of not being interesting anymore, that people will be able to continue to make it very good.
Sci-fi westerns are still alive.
Exactly, with amazing soundtracks. Even after this particular 9-chapter saga has wound down.
I mean, I think that I started reading an author, Mike Resnick, and reading Mike Resnick's books and looking at Star Wars. I was like, wow, sci-fi Western. That's a genre in itself.
Yeah, Firefly.
Yeah.
Well, to some degree, Star Trek too. It was, also. I think Gene Roddenberry originally pitched it as Wagon Train into the Stars.
Yes, he did. So this blending of genres is something that Marvel Studios has done to just almost perfection, where each movie is a superhero movie plus some other genre of movie that are so well integrated that you don't even notice that you're looking at, a mystery or a horror movie or whatever. I mean, you get moments of that, but still, they've just blended them together. And Star Wars is really just trying to be Star Wars. And that's why it's been such a difficult process to complete this nonology. That Star Wars is its own kind of genre. And the only person who knew how to do it was George. And he didn't really know how he did it either. It just kind of happened that way. But
built it as he went along.
Exactly. And so in a way, this is a satisfying conclusion to something that no one had any idea starting out that it would even go to a sequel, let alone that 42 years later that hundreds of millions of people would be wondering what's going to happen next.
Exactly.
So follow your dream.
Exactly. It can happen to anybody. Thank you, David. Thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/59. If you like this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or wherever you listen to podcasts, because those reviews help other people who might like this stuff to find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.